Good to have you with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Have you been listening to the radio as of late? You might be hearing a few more political ads. Donald Trump, that's the only place he's spending any money right now, is on radio. Why is he doing that? Surveys are out showing that that's where the captive audience is. New York Times, political campaigns turn to radio to capture voters. No one better to speak on this than Holland Cooke, longtime media consultant and great friend of ours. My friend, thanks so much.
You bet. Good to talk to you.
You know, when I first saw this story, I wonder, is somebody PRing for the radio industry here, or is this true? You know, we got social media platforms, there's network news, there's iPhones, there's all kinds of stuff out there to communicate now. And radio is still seem to be a driving force to captivate people, according to the survey. What about it, Holland?
In 2015, we passed a milestone when radio surpassed television as the biggest reach medium. And that's just what it sounds like. It reaches more people than any other medium. Some 245 million Americans aged 12 and older listen to radio every week. Forbes magazine reported this a couple of months ago, and it bounced around until this New York Times thing a few days ago pointed out the obvious, is that TV viewers can skip the ad, but radio people are, as you said a minute ago, a captive audience when they're stuck in the car. National average of listeners 18 plus is an hour and 14 minutes of audio consumption daily, most of which, some 72%, is radio. So I think you're right. We're going to be hearing a radio air war in the 2016 election. And I don't just think at the presidential level, but at all levels. Because compared to TV, it's less cluttered in terms of other political messages you're competing for. You can target better, and it's much, much less expensive than buying television.
You know, if I was a TV salesperson, I'd be saying, yeah, but radio folks are avid button pushers. What about that?
Well, the time spent listening varies from format to format. One of the surprises we're reading in the research that has come out lately from Nielsen, the ratings company, is that this is not just about talk radio. It's about music radio, which, as you know, has very long time spent listening. You'll hear radio stations on FM say that it's the official listen at work station. It's the no repeat work day. It's the station everyone at work can agree on. So they tend to turn it on and leave it on all day. And believe it or not, the voters are more susceptible to messages on music stations than on news, talk, and sports stations.
So are they
go?
Are they Republicans or Democrats or independents? Is there a definite breakdown there?
No, it's all over the map. Not surprisingly, the conservatives are more interested in talk radio than the Democrats are. But that's about as much as you can generalize format by format. Nielsen has also sliced it the other way by segmenting voters. So they're mashing up the data of radio formats and voter mindset. And you know, the biggest group of voters that Nielsen has segmented, they call unconnected and unregistered. 17% of people eligible to vote are in play. So I think the messages are going to be targeting them to say register and get out to vote. This is the big X factor that we won't really appreciate until Election Day.
One number that jumped out at me, Holland, was 100 million adults who do not watch local TV, weekday news, are reached by radio. Now, if I'm running a campaign, 100 million people, I got to see a state-by-state breakdown on that. It's just viewer habit, isn't it?
Yeah, and the habits are changing. The so-called cord cutters who have given up on cable or satellite TV and find what they want on Netflix and Hulu, and they've got YouTube pumped into the TV set. And believe it or not, they've hung an antenna because since the digital transition, they can hang a very small antenna that hides behind the set. And what's old is what's new. They're pulling local TV signals off the air. But these are tough times to be a local TV station because there are just hundreds and hundreds of other choices thanks to the cord cutters. And yet the TV ad rates have not gone down as a result. And meanwhile, the momentum that we're going to see beginning in early February is in some of the least expensive radio markets there are. You know, the Iowa and New Hampshire radio markets are all very small markets with low rates. And TV might not be that expensive in Iowa either, which is a very hyphenated TV market. You know, there's a couple of cities that drive the whole state there. But to show up in a meaningful way on television for the New Hampshire primary, you're buying Boston TV, which is very inefficient, because you're talking to Maine and Massachusetts and a bunch of people who aren't voting in New Hampshire. You're paying Boston rates, so you're paying through the nose for TV. And I think that radio is going to play a bigger and bigger part.
Well, the super PAC that supports Ted Cruz spent over $1 million on radio ads, and now he leads in Iowa. Now, I don't know what he's spending in Iowa, but it would seem to me that if this is where the audience is this is where you get people's attention, it's going to be a big play for small market radio stations in Iowa. And this is an opening for Bernie Sanders, I would think. He's not a big TV fan anyway. It's you got to have a great media strategist to get this done in any campaign, don't you?
You sure do. And we put so much stock in the Iowa caucus now, which often is not consequential. Remember, Mike Huckabee won the Iowa caucus. Rick Santorum won the Iowa caucus. So it's not a reliable predictor, and nobody even really paid attention to it until Jimmy Carter shocked everybody by winning back then in '76. So we'll see what comes of it, but certainly there's a lot of interest there. And what tends to work there, as you've seen, is the ground game. And Bernie has got the ground game going there. Iowa can be a surprise. And about a year ago, when Ben Carson was pretending to consider whether or not he should run for president, I sent him a couple of bucks just to get on his spam list. And I've been getting the emails ever since. And they have an awesome ground game going in Iowa. It may be too late, given his blooper reel recently, but I was in Iowa 4 times in 6 months. And driving around Des Moines in the rental car, I only saw 2 election-related billboards until lately. One of them was for C-SPAN, and the other was for Ben Carson. So we'll see how small ball plays, although, as I say, and as you've reported, some of these outlandish things Carson has been saying are very likely what has flipped votes to Ted Cruz from Carson and the precipitous free fall that Carson seems to be in now.
Well, it would seem to me that an aggressive campaign would take some of these outlandish statements, snippets of them, and put them in radio commercials and put a little entertainment to it. I mean, Trump is spending his money on radio. It's like he's made for sound. And nationally, he's leading. I mean, is this going to be his ticket? Has he figured it out?
Well, I'm surprised that we're just now beginning to see his opponents start to use his sound bites against him, because it's a crying shame how little this guy has spent on paid media and how much he's got in earned media. Meanwhile, Jeb Bush, with all that dough in the bank, is just wallpaper and can't crack double digits. It's got to be a frustration to the other candidates in both parties. Often Bernie Sanders is pulling bigger crowds than Trump, but Trump gets all this free coverage because he's just such great copy. Mm-hmm. This Muslim thing bought him a week of A-block coverage, as you'd say in TV. You know, he's the first segment on the newscast.
No doubt. Holland Cooke, media consultant, longtime friend. Great to have you with us. You have a great holiday, my friend. Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
We'll do it again. Thank you, Holland.